I think there were two things that factored into a lower average score for the Module 2 assessment. The first thing is that all students had 60 minutes to engage the 18 questions, but the average student engagement of the 18 questions was 42 minutes out of 60. It's an open book assessment, right? So there's study guides, there's addendum, there's resources. And, under the right circumstances, if you had that stuff ready, you could go and double check things. And then you could use a little more of the time allowed to engage there, right? It's just an observation, right? So usually when you have a lower than average score, if you have students that aren't taking the maximum amount of time and the module assessment is open book, I'm not trying to frustrate anyone. I'm just being very, very intentionally obvious about this point. Another thing that I would tell you is that we didn't have very hard questions or too many easy questions, but in terms of difficulty, the Blackboard rubric used for analysis said, most of the questions were medium difficulty. So that's not a factor, but one thing that is a factor is that a number of students had not completed the assignments or the solution, the related solution. And a lot of times the assignments and solutions allow for opportunities for deeper insight. And it's a proven fact that when students complete the assignments and solutions before they engage the module assessments, they tend to score higher. So what am I saying? Well, a fair number of students did not complete the assignments and assessment before they attempted to engage the first attempt, right? So what I'd like to do is go ahead and review the assessment items that pose the greatest challenge. The reconciliation is already in place. I'd very much like to use the rest of the time in class to go over any assignments or solutions that people still need to complete or need help with, because we need to get those in. I need to post scores so that we can get credit in front of students with plenty of time before we break for Thanksgiving, right? So it's the 3rd of November. We have about 2 weeks and change before we break for Thanksgiving, and on the other side of that we have finals week, right? So are there any questions before we start the item analysis, the review? Any questions?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you for responding. All right. This first item that posed a significant challenge for students was a multiple answer item. The question reads, if you want others to be allowed to use your host system with a custom login, or I'm sorry, it states you want others to be allowed to use your host system with a custom login. However, when another user is logged onto your system, a special VM must run continuously and must not close if switch user is selected to allow another person on your system. Does everybody understand the question? Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a PowerShell window inside my virtual system, right? So I have Server 2022 installed, and I'm running this. And while this is running, let's pretend that someone needs my laptop, and it's my wife. And my wife gets into all kinds of Kool-Aid. I do not. And I don't want her to muck with my virtual machine, right? So it says select the measures below that are required to accomplish this goal. So you can't have the virtual machine close if switch user is selected. Now by switch user, we mean my wife walks up to me while we're talking in our class. She says, I need to do something. And she gives me this, static. And basically, if I click on my login here from the start menu, you'll notice I have other accounts. We could pretend that this first one is the account I have designated for the mermaid. I married a mermaid. Just trying to make this interesting here, but let's say I have an upset mermaid. She needs my screen now. She doesn't want to sign me out. She's not going to sign me out because I'm in the middle of something. And I say, hey, all right, I'll give you the screen for 30 seconds, whatever, but I need it right back. She could use this login. Let's say this is her mermaid login. When she clicks on this, a login screen appears. Basically, my login for this account called owner is parked. It's temporarily parked, right? Now that poses problems for virtual machines because if you're not careful, you can shut those down, right? So one of the answers that you need to choose is run virtual machine in detachable mode. Well, most everybody got that correct, so not a problem there. Create a separate login account for others. Okay. So in order to, oftentimes, if you're in a domain environment like at the campus, I have intentionally created another account for my wife, the mermaid, but there are a lot of cases where people will go ahead and try to log in with guest, like a default guest account or something. It's important to have an intentional separate login account for other users. And then you want to direct you direct others to switch user when their access is needed, as opposed to signing off. If they log off, that's a problem. If you use detach GUI from the machine menu before others, what that does is it allows your virtual machine to run headless, so that you don't have you don't have this. It's running, but what do you do then, right? I mean, you don't have a GUI to work with. That's a bogus answer. And so I wanted to call that out to make sure that everybody understood that. Are there any questions about this multi-answer item? Going once, going twice. Okay. Image A. So there was a true false that says, please see image A below. The feature shown works flawlessly as designed and never fails to identify a new update as soon as it's available. Is this statement true or false? I'm kind of shocked that so many people got this wrong. This feature is notorious for failing. It's supposed to work flawlessly. Half the time it doesn't. It doesn't matter what settings are configured here. Half the time it just doesn't work, right? So that statement is false. Wait a minute.
Dr. Kentop, isn't it set to true?
Oh my. Yeah. Yeah, that's all right. So what I'm going to do is go in there and change this. Here, we'll do this right now. Okay. Let me do this right now. That's a surprise, but we'll fix it. We'll do this right this second. So. Everybody can see what I'm doing? Yeah. My apologies to everyone. That was not intended. I am not sure what happened here. I'm gonna submit and update attempts. And that's gonna change everybody's score, okay? Is everybody good?
Do I need to over the test or?
It just rescored your results. So everyone should have, if you go out and go back in, you should see an updated score if you answered false.
Okay.
Now, if you did not answer false, and if you answered true, then what would happen is that your score would actually go down a little bit. So, but that was good to go over that, just to make sure we're straight about that understanding. Let's make sure we're okay. Right. Yes. Everyone saw me change that to false, correct?
Yes.
Okay, it may be that I need to log out and log in again. I'm not going to do that in the middle of the item analysis, but we'll check it in just a moment. Okay. You should see your score update. The answer is false. If you answered true, yeah, it's
Yeah, I did see my score change.
you did see your score change?
Yes.
That's good. Okay, so there's lag on my side. Could be the way that Edge is working as a proxy between the Blackboard website and I don't know if Chrome is any better, but it seems like there's some lag sometimes. How many of you know that when you're using Edge, everything you do on your web screen goes through Microsoft first before it goes out on the internet?
I did not know that.
Yep.
I did not know that.
Yes, sir. But that's one way they keep things safe. So if somebody's, clicking on a malicious website, then yeah.
So out of the two, which one is safer, Chrome or Edge?
Well, I think it's a toss-up. It all depends on the environment and the malicious exploit. I would say they're both known to be vulnerable to a wide range of common cyber attack methods. Now, of course, people at Google and Microsoft would both argue that's not true, but and which one's faster? Well, it all depends on how you use it and what you do with it. So, yeah. Okay, multiple choice, VM screen capture. You wish to capture a picture of a screen from a running VM. So we're not talking about a moving video, we're talking about just a snapshot. So you can store this inside the VM as a record of VM activity. What is the most efficient way to do this, right? Well, if you access the input menu and then select keyboard and then insert print, then you'd have a record of that inside the VM. Now, I noticed that some students selected this one, engage in the view menu, then take select screenshot. Why is that not the answer choice?
Doesn't that put it on the host
Puts it on
instead
the,
of it
correct.
puts on instead of the virtual machine?
Yes, excellent. Excellent. Thank you for calling that out. Yes, it does. When you use this method, it is quick. So what we're talking about is this right here. You do that. It's going to post that screenshot on the host. And sometimes you want a record inside the virtual machine itself. Okay. Now here it says hold down the Alt key and then press the print screen key. then use Control V to paste it into a document. Well, again, that still puts the image on the host level instead of inside, okay? Any questions?
No
Alrighty,
question.
moving right along. Host screen capture. So as a similar question, you wish to capture a picture of a screen from a running VM, so you can store this on the host system as a record of VM activity. What is the most efficient way to do this? There we go. That's the answer here. If you use the other choices, it wouldn't be as efficient. Now you can adjust the Windows size, click on the host desktop, press the print screen key, but then you have to open another window and paste it in and save it, and there's a lot of extra steps. This is another method. It is possible to do that, but it's just not as efficient. And the question asked, most efficient. Fewest keystrokes or mouse clicks. Loss of VM menus. Now this is a good one that catches people all the time when they start working. You attempt to engage menu bar settings in the view menu for a VM. However, your mouse slips and instead you select the show menu action by accident. All the menus disappear, okay? All the menus disappear below. So basically everything across the bottom everything just goes away. Now your VM is unresponsive and you need your menus back to regain control. Which option should you use to do this with greatest efficiency? Press the host and the home key together. We've actually demonstrated this in class where that's happened to me, and I'm like, oh, here's how you get it back. The home key is a key in the upper right part of your keyboard and is literally stamped with the word home. But the host key depends on what kind of host keyboard you have. Sometimes it's the right control key in the right corner of your keyboard. Sometimes it's the left control key. It all varies. And so when you're working with VirtualBox, their little pop-up will tell you, remember that the right control key is your host key. So what am I talking about? Let's see here. If I go this way. Nope. And now I've lost my menus. Let's use Control Home. Oh, there it is. View. I didn't lose my menu. Full screen. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
It's the right control. If I tried my left control key, it wouldn't work. So I can toggle between those options by remembering the right control key is a quick way to do it. So right control F is full, right control L is seamless. Does everybody know what seamless does? Have we talked
It
about
takes away the
seamless?
border.
Yeah. Yeah, depending, now that doesn't happen for every virtual machine, but it's actually pretty cool. Does everybody see my PowerShell window?
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is for my server operating system, right? My server VM. So if I went in seamless mode, this PowerShell window would be running on my laptop desktop as if it were a laptop application. And then when I start doing PowerShell commands, it doesn't work for my laptop, right? It executes in the server, which is pretty crazy. Anyway, there you have it. Let's keep going. So let's see, we're in mouse issues. A virtual machine user selects the mouse integration option from the input menu. However, the mouse will only appear and work now inside the VM, and all other attempts to use the mouse on the physical host fail. So a user turns on mouse integration, doesn't realize what's going on. Now all of a sudden, no mouse on the desktop. Which option should this user engage to restore use of the mouse on the host with the greatest ease and efficiency? You just press the host key, which we just explained. It's the right control key. And your mouse comes back. It's pretty disconcerting when that happens, though. To somebody who's uninitiated with VirtualBox, it just, people freak out and they're like, oh, how do I do this? And then they try to shut their mouse, their virtual machine down, except as soon as they move their mouse off, it disappears. So they can't tell what they're doing. It's funny, but it's not funny. Any questions? Power off. You have to power off a virtual machine. Oh, the host system is required. So you're powering off the host system. You reach a valid conclusion that to regain control of a host system running under virtual machines, that you must power it off or pull the cord. No access or control of any VM or the host is possible using any recommended method, and all recommended steps have been attempted. That's a condition. Well, what are we saying? We have a virtual machine that's a runaway freight train. So you have a rogue virtual machine. It's barfed things up so badly. Nothing works on the host. Nothing works on the VM. And you're stuck. The power cord is removed and the host responds as all lights and the display is off and unlit. What is the very next step you should perform as a best practice? Leave it off and disconnect for 2 full minutes. Why? Does anyone know why?
Doesn't if you or you mean
What we're talking about here is a very bad crash, right? So the host machine crashes, and it crashes so hard, and we don't know if it crashed because of the virtual machine. We don't know if it was hacked. We just know the host machine is completely unresponsive, and now even the virtual machine is, unresponsive. Typically, when that happens, you have something corrupted or hacked, and it's in random access memory. When you leave it off and disconnect for 2 full minutes, the content of the RAM memory modules on the host zero out. But it can take up to 2 full minutes. It can take up to 2 minutes for the contents of RAM to just disappear. Everybody seems to think as soon as you turn off a machine, what's in RAM is gone. But studies have shown basically the contents of RAM can remain active on a system for up to a minute. And they've actually recovered, people have actually recovered encryption keys for whole disk encryption from the contents of RAM by using compressed air and pulling the RAM modules out. Has anybody ever seen this? Have you ever seen?
something similar to that on my computer. Because my thing, it uses a fan controller to control the fans, and it wasn't working. So then I did the thing of turn it off and turn it back on. But I didn't wait. So as soon as I turned it back on, the same issue basically just started again, like nothing happened. So after I plugged it out and made sure it was off for probably like 2 to 3 minutes and turned it back on and started operating normally again.
Right? Can everybody see this screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's called a cold boot attack.
WAPA has been an issue here on these islands for decades. You felt it, and we felt it. The current foundation of WAPA is
So some students at Princeton University basically came up with a way to
If you've
use.
never heard of it, chances are disk encryption is used to protect your private data. You may have seen headlines about stolen laptops containing social security numbers, bank account information, and other personal data. Disk encryption is becoming an increasingly common method to protect against this data theft. Disk encryption scrambles the contents of your hard drive, making them unreadable without an encryption key. Windows Vista, Mac OS X, and Linux all provide disk encryption features. A computer is completely off. If an encrypted computer is stolen, or even if we loaded this image into RAM, here's what happens after we cut the power. The bits fade gradually and in a predictable way.
Takes up to a
In this
minute.
case, the final pattern is a series of horizontal bars.
Takes over a minute. Everybody see that?
Different memory chips fade at different rates, but most take seconds to fade before power was cut.
So they did this.
However, since Windows has a program that makes a copy of every hacker accesses
Let's
it,
see.
it's off. If it starts with
Um,
products are also at risk. This
they,
captures most of the chips. We've also developed software tech RAM,
oh, come on. Show me the,
included in
show me
some
the stuff.
versions of enters a password to unlock the key. But afterwards, for as long as the computer is running,
I'll send you a link, but basically if you just type in Princeton cold boot attack, when you watch the whole video, they take compressed air, they turn it upside down, and they blast the memory module as soon as they pull the bottom off of the laptop. So they do that pull the bottom off the laptop in 20 seconds or so with a good screwdriver, you know, like a power screwdriver, and then they pull the module and they blast it with an upside down can of compressed air from Office Max, and it gushes out all this cold stuff. Has anybody ever used that compressed air where the can gets cold?
Yes.
I haven't tried it as yet.
Yeah. The cold keeps the memory intact longer, and then they plug it into a memory module on a system, and that's how they can capture the contents. Well, the point we're trying to make here is if you have a problem that crashed your system that badly, the best way to get rid of it is to power everything off, but then leave it off for at least 2 full minutes. Okay. And we may have not explained this in class explicitly, but it's in your study guide or related resources. All right. You want to, this is a multiple answer question. This posed challenges for most of our students. You want to create a virtual machine that many other users can use. And you want to configure this so that others who use it do not have to perform routine setup tasks to run it. All the settings are configured in advance, so the VM works on their system just like your system. What menu option do you use to accomplish this, and what consideration must you take to be successful? So this is right out of your textbook, right? You use the file menu and then export appliance. And on the other side, well, both on the host and on the others that use it, you have to assess your available host hard disk space. When you export the virtual machine, it's going to create a huge file that basically can be moved over to another system. And that huge file, that appliance, it's called an appliance. It effectively doubles the size of your virtual machine. So if you're short on hard disk space, that process will crash. So part of the process is to assess how much hard disk space you have. When you move that appliance onto another machine, you want to make sure the other machine also has enough hard drive space. So that's another consideration. Any question about this item? Alrighty. VirtualBox menu settings. And this one, and at that point, I think what we're gonna do is scroll down to the ordering, and I don't know that we're gonna go over every one of these, but we'll go through the ones up to this point. VirtualBox menu settings. So a true false item reads, when the VirtualBox preferences are changed, these only affect a running VM and not any new VM that are created. Now, does this say when the virtual machine settings or virtual machine preferences are changed? Or does it say virtual box? When I change preferences here, and I change preferences in the VirtualBox environment, any of the machines that are in here can be affected by those changes, right? So that statement is true. Wait a minute. It says these only affect a running VM. Oh, I get it. These only affect a running VM and not any new ones. Yeah, that is false. It affects running ones and new ones. Any questions? Yeah, that is scored correctly. Which viewing option? A user of a virtual machine wishes to change the viewing options. According to experts, which menu option should the user engage first, next, and etc.? You want to start with host A, then host C, then host F. What are we talking about? Host A is adjust the window size. So what you're going to do is you're going to select this one first, and then adjust your window size to see if that works for you, right? Everybody see how that just changed? When I shrunk it. Yeah, if I shrink it down enough, it'll start to change. That's the first thing that you do. Then we recommend that you try host C and then host F. So if you do it in that order, you tend to shift gears. So I do host A, then host C, and then host F. And one of those three options will work for your given display environment. What do I do to get my menus back here? That was a question we just had.
Control home.
Control home. There we go. I can go full view. And there we have it. Yep. Now there are times where you can change the display within the virtual machine. This is just a side note. Where you can increase it. Did everybody see what happened there? So if you use that sequence of host keys and you get to full screen, then you can go inside the virtual machine and you have options to change it within the desktop there. Now, this is something that's mentioned in the, I think the study guide or the addendum. Now, what happens if you don't use that sequence? Well, if you don't use that sequence, let's go to host auto resize, right? No. We'll come out of full screen mode. We'll go to scaled mode. If I go into here now and go to display settings, a lot of times these options are grayed out depending on which display you use. That's really small though. Any questions about this item?
No question.
Virtual machine transfer. Multiple choice question. You must transfer a virtual machine onto a newer host with more capacity. Which menu option should you use to do this with the greatest efficiency? Well, you can copy a virtual machine, you can export a virtual machine, you can create an appliance on from a virtual machine. And believe it or not, from the machine menu, there is actually a move option. If you have a VirtualBox set up on other systems, well, in particular, if it's not running, then move is not grayed out. Let me prove it to you. I'm going to go ahead and view full screen again. I'm going to go ahead and shut down. So for your retake, I might say, oh, you want to move a machine, you can't move it, it's gray. What do you do? Well, you shut it down. Now, if I have it selected and I go to the machine menu, see how move is there? It's kind of confusing because people are like, okay, I can copy it or clone it, I can export it. There's all these options, but here it says we're not copying it and duplicating it. What would I use if I want to duplicate a virtual machine? And allow it to be installed on 10 different systems and all of the settings work right. All the settings work the same. What would I use then? Which option do you think would be best? Should I
Use clone.
You could use clone, but typically clone is when you want to duplicate it once. If you want to create an appliance, if you're going to use it in multiple systems and all the menus and logins are the same, what you're doing is creating like a kiosk. Then you're going to export to OCI. You can clone it, but then each time you open it up and set it up, it's going to say, hey, this is a different machine, but do you want it to be different? Do you want it to, or do you want it to have a unique identity? So there's all these questions you have to walk through when you export and import. Or when you clone. I'm sorry, if you clone or copy. Now, if you export it and you say, okay, I want to turn this into an appliance, you just load the appliance or import the appliance and run it. And it's the same exact machine, however many times you import it. So it is just easier and simpler. So I'm glad you spoke out. You can clone it. It's just there are specific advantages to cloning it that make that work a little differently. What I'd like to do is wrap up the last couple of questions real quick so we can clear in time for you to get to your next class. Let's see. These items students did better with, but the ordering item, not so much. There were 2 ordering items that didn't go as well. So let's look at those. If anyone wants to see some of these other questions, right? Where for each of these from here to here, I'm sorry, from here to there, basically most students got them correct. And all but one got it correct. Let's look at the ordering real quick. It says you are tasked with routine maintenance on the VM and the host system that operate critical resources many depend on to perform their daily tasks. So this isn't just a VM you're going to be working with to try some things. This is what we'd call a production virtual machine. Order the sequence of recommended maintenance tasks that experts recommend as a best practice from first to final. So in order, you're supposed to update the host operating system first, because that's the foundation for all of the virtual machines that are running on that physical machine. Does everybody understand that?
Yes.
Then you update the host applications. Now, why is this important as a next step? That updates VirtualBox. VirtualBox is an application that runs on the host operating system. So for the host, VirtualBox is a host application. Update the OS first, then update VirtualBox. Third, update VirtualBox and VirtualBox extensions. I guess either one of these 2 could be in order. If you have applications like browsers on a lot of systems, all right, so why is this one better to do before this one? A lot of applications on hosts, especially for hosts that are running hypervisors. People use web and email and they have Office apps or streaming media apps open all the time. And what you want to do is establish a stable host environment. And if you're, I guess we could argue, I'm going to go back and assess how many people missed between this choice and this choice. But you're better off updating all the apps on the host, especially the ones that are open all the time. Now, if you're always running your VirtualBox, always, if the purpose of that machine is exclusively to run VirtualBox, then you would update that first. I hope that explains. Fourth choice is to update the VirtualBox guest editions, then update the virtual machine operating system, then update the virtual machine applications. Any questions about that sequence?
No questions.
Okay. Most of the time when people are running virtual machines, they're also running they're multitasking. So, okay. The other ordering one here, recovering an unresponsive operating system. So you are directed to regain control of an unresponsive VM affecting the host system. Every attempt to first engage shutdown options from inside the VM have failed. So you're inside the virtual machine and you're trying to use the options within the virtual machine, even using the administrative account. So it doesn't matter if you're root or not. There are other important VM on the host that need to remain running if possible. So you have more than one virtual machine running and you don't want to shut the host down. Order the steps recommended to regain control with the least disruption to other applications and virtual machines running on the host. So you would apply the machine menu option. What is that? I guess I'm going to look at that. Machine menu option PA use with that's probably a typo. So I'll look at that one too. You're going to use the machine option to power down, I think. Then apply the ACPI, then apply reset. No. All right, let's start over again. Yeah, I'm going to go and look and see what that is, and we'll reassess that question. But basically, that's the first option to power down an unresponsive machine. So, yeah, pause. PA, I think. You want to pause the machine and then unpause it, and a lot of times it'll be responsive again. That should be explicitly stated in your study guide or in the addendum. And it might even be in your textbook. Any questions on that first option? Okay. I'll go ahead and, as I said, I'm going to reassess how many students missed between those two answer choices in each of the ordering, and we might rescore that. Please complete remaining assignments and assessments for Module 2 so I can score them as a group and post credit. I'm going to move ahead and post credit before this week is out, if whether people have got their stuff in or not. And then if you can, please go ahead and reconcile promptly. By the start of class next Thursday, your reconciliation for this assessment needs to be turned in, okay? And then we'll post the final version, the retake. Any questions before we clear for the day?
No question.
Thanks for joining us. We'll
Could I
see you
speak
next.
to you off the class for like 5 minutes?
I have another class starting right at 3. So,
Okay.
yeah. Did you send email?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Let me check to see what I have, and I'll respond back to you as soon as I get clear of the next class, okay?
Just a
Okay.
quick thing, Dr. Kentoff, before we clear.
Uh-huh.
For one of the assignments, we had to switch the virtual machine from NAC to Bridge. When I switched it to Bridge, the virtual machine kept crashing, and I uploaded that to the assignment to show you.
Okay, there's a workaround. We can fix that. If we share a screen, I can show you how to fix it.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Let's schedule a time to share a screen so I can help you fix it and you can get it done.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.